Hello, students, and welcome back to our study of The Great Gatsby. Today, we're going to look at the first part of Chapter 7. We're going to summarize it, and we're going to analyze a few parts of it. Chapter 7 is the one where it's oppressively hot, and Daisy is trying to work up the courage to tell Tom she's having an affair with Gatsby. All right, so the chapter begins on a Saturday night, but Gatsby has locked himself up into his house like an angry cumdrum on Halloween. Sorry, random people of New York City, no parties tonight. He's also fired all of his servants and hired new ones, suspicious, mean ones who won't gossip. You see, Daisy has started coming over often in the afternoons. And yes, what you think is happening in those afternoons is in fact happenings. Gatsby has essentially fired all of his classy servants and replaced them with his unrefined mobsters. Okay, so the time has arrived when Daisy is going to tell Tom about the affair. And we know that this conversation can't end well because the last person who disagreed with Tom ended up with a broken nose. So, to ensure that Tom doesn't hurt Daisy when she breaks him the news, Gatsby is going to accompany her during this very difficult conversation. Old sport, I would advise you against hitting Daisy. You see, I have 12 murderous gangsters standing by outside of your house. So if you try anything funny, this book is going to end like the end of a Quentin Tarantino film. Actually, no, that's not a mobster book, though it would be awesome if it were. And Gatsby isn't going to bring his mobsters to make sure that Tom doesn't try any violence. That honor goes entirely to Nick and Jordan. Yep. Nick and Jordan are instructed to hang out at Buchanan's house while Daisy and Gatsby tell Tom about the affair. Whoa! Fittingly, it's the hottest day of the year. Okay, Nick enters the house to see Daisy and Jordan doing what they do best, wearing white dresses and listening to Tom talk on the phone to his mistress. But if you read carefully, it's not Tom's mistress on the phone, it's someone else. Tom's voice in the hall rose higher with annoyance. Very well, then. I won't sell you that car at all. I'm under no obligations to you at all. And as far as you bothering me about it at lunchtime, I won't stand for it at all. Holding down the receiver, said Daisy cynically. No, he's not, assured Nick. It's a bona fide deal. I happen to know about it. Remember chapter 2? It seems that George Wilson, the rundown repairman from the Valley of Ashes, has called Tom about selling him that car. Do you remember how in chapter 2, how Tom was manipulating George by promising him he would sell him that car, but in reality it was just Tom's cover story so he can keep going back and making plans to rendezvous with his wife? Yeah. That's important. We need to keep that detail locked into our heads. All right. Gatsby shows up. So Daisy sends Tom into the other room to make drinks, and she kisses Jay wildly and declares that she loves him while Tom is in the other room. Now, we finally meet the Buchanan's daughter. I forgot they had a daughter. I'm pretty sure they did too. Okay, so Daisy's daughter, Pammy, comes in and makes a minor appearance while Daisy channels her inner Gollum. Blessed, precious, come to your own mother that loves you and stand up and say howdy do to the man that's not your father but will be your father soon. Gatsby, visibly upset but trying to hide it, shakes Pammy's reluctant hand. Excited to introduce her daughter to her soon-to-be next husband, Daisy calls Pammy a dream, an absolute little dream. But you see, the child is not a part of Gatsby's dream, the green lights. Pammy is Gatsby's nightmare because she's an unpleasant reminder that Daisy isn't the same Daisy from 5 years ago. Tom comes back with drinks, and they have an extraordinarily strained cocktail with one another. Daisy utters yet another fabulous Fitzgerald line, "What do we do with ourselves this afternoon?" And the day after that, and for the next 30 years? Good question. I don't know, like get a job, start a charity, write a novel? Despite the heat, Daisy tells Gatsby, "You always look so cool." Don't worry, Nick interprets this line for us. This is Daisy speak for, "I love you, Jay." And since Tom has been married to her, he speaks Daisy speak, and the cocktail hour strains tenfold. To break the tension, they all decide to go to town. They bring whiskey because that helps with everything. To be clear, it doesn't. Please, no, don't. That's a bad life choice. Now, remember how Nick has been crushing on his cousin's voice ever since chapter 1? Well, while everyone is getting ready, Nick and Gatsby are alone to discuss Daisy's voice, and Gatsby explains why it's so enchanting. "She's got an indiscreet voice," Nick remarked. Her voice is full of money," Gatsby said suddenly. That was it. I'd never understood it before. It was full of money. That was the inexhaustible charm that rose and fell in it, the jingle of it, the cymbal songs of it. High in the white palace, the king's daughter, the golden girl. Now, Nick is incredibly wealthy, but despite how much money the Caraways have, Tom and Daisy are so much wealthier than Nick that he can't even comprehend it. Then everyone gets into a car to drive into town. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated, so pay attention closely. Tom insists on driving Gatsby's beautiful yellow Rolls Royce. Remember that beautiful one in chapter 4? And after an awkward dispute, Tom drives Gatsby's yellow circus wagon with Nick and Jordan sitting in the back seat. And Gatsby drives Tom's car with Daisy sitting shotgun. But why, oh, why does Tom insist on taking Gatsby's car? It's weird. It's different. I suggest that this is a symbol of Tom's overt objectification of women. To Tom, women are no different than cars. Women are something to be purchased, used, sold, and then replaced. In effect, Tom is telling Gatsby, because you took Daisy for a drive, I'm going to take your car for a spin. Now we're samesies. During this car ride, Tom realizes that Jordan and Nick have known about the affair the whole time. They pass the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg and stop at Wilson's gas station. Tom's mistress, this is Tom Wilson. Remember, Tom's mistress, husband Wilson? Yes, it's the same one. Now, Wilson has wised up about his wife's affair, but he doesn't know it's with Tom. He reveals that he called earlier that day because he needs money because he and his wife are going to move out west. I need money pretty bad, and I was wondering what you were going to do with your old car. What? What do you want my old car? What do you want money for all of a sudden? I've been here too long. I want to get away. My wife and I are going west. Once Tom knows that George knows about Myrtle's affair, Tom says, I'll let you have that car. I'll send it over tomorrow afternoon. This is interesting. Because in chapter 2, Tom uses the car and selling that car to George to hold it over George's head so he can continue to meet with Myrtle. Earlier in this chapter, Tom refuses to sell George the car, but now he's realized, now Tom is not going to sell George the car. He's going to give George the car. Why the change? Is it so George can have the money to move away with Myrtle, effectively sweeping Tom's mess under the rug? Or is it because at this moment, Tom is experiencing the completely foreign to him feeling of empathy because he, like George, now knows what it's like to have a spouse cheat? Or is it more? I submit to you that once again, this moment symbolizes Tom's misogynistic attitude towards women. He's giving George his old car because he's paying George for using his wife. It's a transaction. It's not a moment of empathy. Nick again sees the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg keeping their vigil and compares them to another set of eyes, Myrtle Wilson watching from an upstairs window. The person she's staring at is Jordan, who she thinks is Tom's wife. Tom realizes he's losing control of his wife and his mistress. Wow, this is a mess. Now, our characters are going to do what most of us do when they have nothing to do. They're going to rent the most expensive hotel room in the most expensive hotel in the most expensive city to figure out what they're going to do with the rest of their afternoon. And Tom and Gatsby are going to take off their gloves and duke it out for Daisy. Read on to see who wins the fight, and more importantly, Daisy's heart. This is Mr. Bockel. Keep reading, keep learning.